Hello, I am Parum Misri. I am a rising senior in the Seattle, Washington area. I'm 16 years old, and I hope you enjoy my video on Article 370's past, present, and future. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to the Chronicle, the only time-traveling encyclopedia in this universe. We collect all of the facts from all of history. Truly the only comprehensive information source you'll ever need. Isn't the Chronicle already the name of a newspaper? Probably one of those new upstarts, eh? They're a dime a dozen these days. It was founded more than 100 years ago. Oh, well, time is relative. Never mind that. You're the new recruit, aren't you? Yeah, I'm applying to become a junior editor. Wonderful! So, is there an interview? Not exactly. You see, we have a different method of measuring prospective recruits. We give you a subject in history, and you're tasked with finding out everything you can about it and reporting back to us. This sounds kind of more like unpaid labor than the recruitment process. Nonsense, my boy. Here, let me get you your topic for you. Here we go. Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. Oh yeah, I think I read about that in the news a while back. Oh, the news. Never gives the whole story. That's why we exist, of course. Well, off you go to 1947. Wow, everyone's really excited. What's going on here? What, haven't you heard? I've been off traveling for a bit. Well, the Indian Independence Act was signed today. We're finally free from 2 centuries of oppression. Wow, so it's a unique chance to build a national government from the ground up, uniting everyone under the most populous nation the world has ever seen? Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. You see,
After 200 years of British rule, when the empire was dissolved, it was split into the Dominion of India, the Dominion of Pakistan, and the princely states, which were compelled to accede to either of the 2 dominions.
I see. It looks like I'm gonna have to do some first-hand research. What do you mean? Don't worry about it. Look over there! Where did he go?
In 1947, Jammu and Kashmir was one of the princely states. Its Hindu ruler, Hari Singh, originally tried to maintain his independence. However, some Pashtun tribesmen from Pakistan launched an invasion to try and force Singh's hand. He appealed to India for help, which India agreed to give, under the condition that Jammu and Kashmir would accede to India. Singh signed the Instrument of Accession, which then began the process of formally integrating the region with India.
Hey, you over there. Am I in time for the Kashmir representative's speech? I think so, but you should probably hurry. Thanks. Here's a bit of context.
India had set up something called the Constituent Assembly, which was sort of a council to lay out the new governing constitution. The former princely states were each invited to do 2 things as a part of this. Firstly, they could send representatives to the National Assembly, and secondly, they could set up their own state-level constituent assembly to help determine specific laws for their regions. We're about to see the representatives from Kashmir give a speech.
Namaskar, everybody. We are the representatives from the former princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. That's right, and we have, shall I say, a rather unusual request. Kashmir is a land of deep culture and rich heritage, and we're here because we want to protect that. We think that full control by the central government will serve to dilute our culture, and so we would like to propose exemption from the Indian Constitution. Now, we promised to follow certain accords when we acceded to the Dominion, and we will keep our promise. We will follow all of the articles of the Constitution that were specifically outlined in the Instrument of Accession, but all other areas of our life, citizenship, property rights, and personal freedoms, will be governed by a state constitution that will be created by our own state constituent assembly. Well, this certainly is unprecedented. I agree. What would happen if all the states asked for something like this? And what if,
I think
that
the most important thing to
in this
consider
issue,
here.
alright, that's enough. I am a Kashmiri by birth, and as such I understand the importance of preserving its cultural heritage. I am willing to agree to these terms. We will add a couple new sections to the Constitution, Articles 370 and 35A. Together, these will outline the special privileges that we are giving the region. However, we are going to put this in the temporary provisions section. After you figure out your state constitution, the state and national governments together can remove these articles from the national constitution. Well, that seems pretty reasonable to me. I agree. Some of the special privileges outlined in this document should be limits on the power of national parliament, a need for the state government to ratify national decrees before applying them in the region, and restrictions on non-residents of the state to acquire governmental employment, earn scholarships, or own property inside the state. That should keep our demographics relatively stable. Wait a minute. By forbidding outsiders from establishing lives in the region, whether as a worker, student, or property owner, they ensured that there would always be a Hindu minority in Kashmir, despite the fact that Kashmir was a part of India, which was a Hindu-majority country. When you factor in the fact that Pakistan had also obviously wanted control of the region, the results of this almost seem inevitable. I think I've seen enough. I'm going back to the main office.
Article 370 was clearly meant to only be a temporary provision. It exempted the state from complete applicability of the Constitution of India. It allowed Jammu and Kashmir to have its own constitution and created a state within a state. As time passed, people with vested interests, such as politicians, bureaucrats, or businessmen within Jammu and Kashmir, ensured retention of Article 370. Article 370 allowed the upper ruling class of Kashmir to pick and choose the union laws that they wanted to ratify and ignore the ones that did not suit their purposes. They became richer and stronger while the common masses grew poorer and disillusioned. The state did not benefit from many national developmental schemes targeted towards the poor. The common masses were denied their legitimate slice of the economic pie. The separatist lobby in the state used this barrier to build a mindset of alienation. Article 370 built real barriers between the people of Kashmir and the rest of India, thus fostering separatism. While citizens of Jammu and Kashmir could own property and settle anywhere in India, Article 370 prevented any Indian from claiming any such right in Jammu and Kashmir. The article also served to stymie trade in the region. It was less profitable to set up a business here since property was impossible to acquire for outsiders, and the difficult terrain that encompassed the region compounded the issue. Most businesses were left with little reason to extend their reach to Kashmir, thereby hindering the development and growth of the local economy. Article 370 left Kashmiri Hindus helpless, without the protections that the Constitution of India offered to Indian citizens. They were relegated to a powerless minority without any real rights and freedoms. In the early 80s, a wave of radical Islam was growing in Iran and Pakistan. Over time, it was extended to Kashmir, and by the late 80s, Pakistani terrorists had succeeded in recruiting and radicalizing Muslim Kashmiri youth. They trained them and sent them back to India to unleash terrorism, fight the Indian forces, and drive Kashmiri pundits away. It's possible that if Article 370 had never been passed, the terrorism never would have started. One could argue that between 1950 and 1990, if Article 370 had not been in place, traders and businessmen from the plains of India would have migrated to Kashmir to set up businesses and industries, which would have led to economic growth and prosperity. This also could have served to soften the sharp demographic imbalance between Hindus and Muslims, and could have resulted in better conditions all around. Perhaps the disillusioned youth would not have been swayed to embrace terrorism, and the Hindus would still be living there.
Fascinating. Well, what do you think will happen now? Don't we have a time machine? We could just go and check. Well, you see, the time machine, it only goes back to the past, because that's already happened, you see. The future, it hasn't happened yet, so it wouldn't know where to visit. Well, that's fair enough.
Well, firstly, as we know, on August 5th, 2019, the President of India issued a historic order which stated that all the provisions of the Indian Constitution applied to Jammu and Kashmir. This order effectively abrogated Article 370, downgrading the former state of Jammu and Kashmir into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. It's a demonstration of strength by the Indian government. They're signaling that they're not going to avoid tough issues going forward. Here's what I think is going to happen now. There's now a chance that, in the future, the Kashmiri Hindu community will be able to return to our ancestral homeland. This will be a slow process. Decades of conflict will take a while to resolve. India needs to seek out organizations like Panun Kashmir and other Kashmiri Hindu organizations to build and execute a clear roadmap for the safe return of Kashmiri Hindus to their homeland. As India's economy continues to grow, it will create economic opportunities for the locals and incentives for businesses from the rest of the country. This could lead to growth, peace, and prosperity at last for the troubled region.
I think that's pretty insightful. Well, I'll be sure to put in a good word for you with the executives when they review your application. Wait, that's it? I'm afraid so.